Hello, it's Jackie Schomburg-Minden. Today I'm going to take these two top panels that kind of go together in their style of palette knife work, and the bottom two panels that I had started long ago and long since abandoned, and I'm going to turn them into a cohesive series. So only the bottom two actually kind of go together from the start, but as you'll see in the end, we'll get four pieces that go well together. Do you ever end up with odds and ends of paintings that were unsuccessful, or they're not quite finished, or they need something and you're not quite sure what, so you just keep setting them aside? Well, this is the video for you because you can still save them. You can work them into a current series you're working on. You can take all of your mismatched art and make a new series out of that. No matter how different they are from the beginning, I think you'll agree that these are pretty different in the beginning, and they're already starting to look more alike. So the first thing I was doing was establishing a color palette. So the color palette is a very strange one. As soon as I put down the yellow ochre, it did not look good with the fluorescent red. However, don't worry, trust me on this one. And I'm adding some tissue collage, this Celadon green color. I really, really like the Celadon green with bright pops of color behind it. It extinguishes the flame of the fluorescent red, but doesn't completely snuff it out, to keep on with my metaphor. I don't know, I guess it just kind of points to it and says, wow, look at this red, it's pretty cool. But the rest of it is calm for your eyes and brain. I'm just using gloss medium to affix the collage tissue to these panels. These are 5x5 inch cradled wood panels, if you're curious. And again, I'm drying them every so often just so that basically so that the next layer that I'm putting on can be its own independent layer. I don't want it to be for my purposes here, I don't want the colors to get stuck in with the other wet mediums or other paint layers. I added some quinacridone red, and I thought it would help, kind of, I don't know, soften the red a bit. It ended up just kind of making it sad. So, um, typically quinacridone red brightens things up, but typically I'm not always using this fluorescent red. So, lesson learned there. It felt more like a burgundy when I added it to this color. Looking for more collage papers. I didn't have a plan, shocker, I know, with where to go from here. So I'm just trying some things on, checking in, seeing what colors I want to use next, what size collage pieces I'm looking for. Whenever I find myself trying the same piece on in the same area, that's when I just think, okay, just glue it down. Trying not to overthink, but as a classic overthinker, I know how easy it is to get swept into well, is it perfect here? I don't know. So at a certain point, just glue it down and move on. I can say that now because I'm getting better at it, but I do know how hard it is if you're prone to overthinking. Repeat after me. It's only paint. It's only collage paper. And I say that with love because, again, I know it's only paper, but sometimes it's hard to let go of some of the papers. As I'm going through the collage papers and the different options, I'm thinking, does this add to what's currently on these panels, or does it distract from that? And neither is necessarily right or wrong, but it depends on what you're looking for. So here I'm looking for something that's going to add some value, some darker value here, but not something that's super detailed that's going to add more chaos, because there's already a lot going on in here. And when you have such a bright color like this fluorescent red, you tend to need less, just less action. At least I tend to use less action around it because it's already so vibrant and so bright. It's just some butcher paper with some, I don't even know, doodles on it. I love doing this exercise because it reminds me how easy it is to turn stalled paintings into something new. It totally breathes fresh air into them. You can barely even see what used to be on these panels. Now this is something I tried. These are my kids' light bright papers for making patterns. And I was going through things and getting rid of a whole bunch of things. They never use the patterns anyway, they just make up their own things. So I thought I would see what that would be like for collage. So stay tuned. Anyway, going back to what I was saying about breathing new life into stalled art. If I don't redo these, or if I didn't start redoing these, they would continue to sit on my shelf. And the palette knife ones, the two that started on top, I did those when my youngest was a baby. So that is 5 or 6 years ago. So clearly I'm not going to continue working on that piece at this point if I haven't touched it in 5 or 6 years. It was time. I love that this orange scrap, the circle, the oval matched with one of the other circles so I could continue it up. It's my favorite thing when those things happen. Now you notice in the upper right, that dark Payne's gray / navy blue color, that helps so much because it really changes the value. Now there's some darks, there's some really white lights, and there's some midtones. The other three, it's mostly midtones. And I think that's part of the reason I was struggling. So I'm using these light bright things as a stencil. And it's coming out a bit muddy, meaning they're not perfect circles, as you can probably tell. But it looked cool. So I went with it. And even on the bottom right, you can see now that now I have much more interesting painting because now there's something really light that draws your eye in. It's not so flat. It's more dimension, just changing the values. I started adding alizarin crimson, which is kind of a moodier color than the quinacridone red for sure. But it felt less sad. I think it's just the clashing with the fluorescent red. It's not your fault, quinacridone red, it's not your fault. It's just who your neighbors were. some magazine collage pieces I found. Because I didn't have a clear direction that I was headed in, I'm kind of throwing everything at it just to see what looks good, to see what I want. Including more paint. So this is a brayer with some pyrrole red. I'm adding the pyrrole red as a bit of a bridge from the alizarin crimson to that bright pyrrole orange on the upper right to some of the yellow ochre and fluorescent red. I don't know if a bridge is the right word, but just to tie it all together, to find something where they can kind of all relate to. I was still unsatisfied that there wasn't enough black or dark value in the other three. So adding some more here. Making some choices because it's clearly not a subtle change. I don't know if you can tell. I can tell watching this how timidly I was putting on the black in that bottom right. I was not fearlessly throwing black down on this panel. I was kind of tiptoeing up around it. Partially because I wasn't sure how thick I wanted the black, and partially because I think I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So it's not bad to go slow and to do things in thin layers to build them up. It's actually a really great practice to use. It's just not one that I typically use. Though whenever I do use it, I'm always glad I do. So go figure. I should probably just use it more. So I'm very happy that this was very successful to take the four different panels in the beginning that had three very different visual aesthetics at the time. And now, clearly they all four go together. The color stories match. Some of the elements are similar. The different collage pieces. Some of the paint. The white paint dots. They're similar enough that you can tell that they go together. And yet, different enough that they're still interesting. I did a little bit extra on them when I wasn't recording, so these are the final four and how they ended up. I post new abstract mixed media artwork videos every Sunday morning. So if you enjoyed this video, I'll send you a new one next week if you subscribe.